Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Donut Hole, your place where a couple of guys sit around and pontificate. My name is Paul.
And I'm Jason.
And we're here from your studios right here in Nashville, Tennessee. As you can tell by the hats, it's Christmas time. So, want to wish everybody out there a Merry Christmas, happy belated Hanukkah, and happy holidays and all that jazz. So, I think we're going to talk about Christmas stuff today, right?
Yeah, talk about the holidays a little bit.
Okay. So, I guess let's go ahead and start out with kind of the notion of Santa Claus.
Yeah, I was interestingly doing some reading on that and wanted to find out the origins. And starts out with, of course, St. Nicholas, who's a real person, bishop in what is modern-day Turkey. Purportedly very rich man, was left a lot of money from his parents, very generous man. And the one story I read how this kind of ties in some other things is there was a poor man in the city that he lived in that had 3 daughters who could not get married because he couldn't come up with a dowry. And St. Nicholas decided he would wish to pay that dowry, but he wanted to do it anonymously. So what he did was he dropped gold down the chimney. And apparently on the first, he did it 3 separate times for each daughter. And apparently on the first one, the legend says that it fell into a stocking that was dried by the fire. Thus, born the tradition of putting gifts in stockings.
That's really kind of cool, because a lot of people just, we always have these childhood notions and what have you, of these stories, Christmas stories have been passed down. It's always, you hang your stockings, Santa puts little goodies in there for you. And, but, a lot of times people don't know where these things come from.
Right. Yeah, I didn't really either.
So it's definitely cool to kind of hear the history behind it that actually has turned into the traditions that, we as a society practice, which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
So, I know noticed we were talking earlier, you said something about the fact that, at least in the earlier Christmas traditions, a lot of people put other gold-colored things, whether like gold-foiled candies or tangerines.
Right, or fruits, which back then, would be considered a luxury as well, fruits from northern Africa and whatnot, to represent that gold in the stocking.
It's kind of funny. I want to tie this into another celebration of a different type. I know during Chinese New Year, it's kind of a similar thing, obviously with the same red theme that they do with that as well. But there's gold things that are anything gold for Chinese New Year symbolize like luck and good fortune. So whether it's gold foil candies or oranges and tangerines and things of that nature, they kind of do the same thing. It's kind of funny to see that same culture or some of the similar things within different cultures kind of all tying in together for a similar kind of celebration. And their big celebration. It's their big celebration for like the big family meal and all that, coming back together as a family, which is one of the things that's pretty common here in the West as well for Christmas. So I guess let's talk a little bit about since that's kind of like a nice little St. Nicholas story. Let's go ahead and try and tie in some other things with it as well. So I know St. Nick is sometimes also accompanied by some other less friendly entities, especially in Central Europe and what have you. So let's talk a little bit about some of those. I mean, some people might know of the probably most notorious one here in the West would be Krampus.
Yeah, that's been popularized recently in movies and kind of a horror movie kind of thing. But it's definitely the most visually striking. The representation of there's some legends that half goat, half man, but it's basically, from my understanding, it's a representation of, they think that may have even came from a pagan demon. He's there to punish the bad children and possibly whip them with chains and give them coal when they misbehave.
Yeah, because I know sometimes, if you can check it out online, sometimes you'll see, images, like they do like a Christmas parade and they'll have different Krampuses there. It's like part of a big, celebration or what have you.
Yeah.
But he's not the only one.
No, I was surprised to find out that there was others. I'd heard about him. And then, I know any fans of The Office will know that, there was an episode where Dwight, who's a Pennsylvania Dutch guy in the show, I don't know if you're a fan, he dressed up as a character named Belsnickel, which when I saw the show, I'd assumed was just making fun of Krampus or perhaps just nonsense, but it's actually a real thing. And very similar to Krampus, except he's a man. He's not a demon that dresses up in furs and scary masks and also terrorizes children. I was sharing the anecdote with you earlier about how he would supposedly give candies and cakes to the good children, but then when they were going after the candies and cakes on the floor, he would whip them with his switch, simultaneously causing them pain. So also a very scary character, meant to scare the children.
Yeah, but you also mentioned how the switch was not just, it's not like he beats them and they scream, though.
No, they said the switch was enchanted where the pain was great, but they would not scream or flinch because the switch was enchanted. So, kind of a terrifying thing for young children to hear about.
I'm going to get myself one of those.
Yeah.
Because I know Krampus was particularly, the story of Krampus, it differs a little bit from region to region. I know that there's like a Bavarian, Austrian kind of version of him. I know he's also in the Czech Republic, Vienna, and Slovenia, and probably Slovakia, and most of those kind of Central European countries. But each place, slight regional differences,
right,
and varying degrees of how vicious he is. Sometimes he's, a little vicious, but other times he's full on.
Yeah. And there's even, festivals in Europe where it's just a Krampus base, where there's many people that dress up like it, and it's an odd cultural thing. It's almost like the foil to Santa Claus. You got the jolly man, and then you've got the possibly evil demon, depending on what version you're looking at.
Yeah. So that was Belschnickel. There's others too, from what I understand, right?
Yeah, the other two aren't quite as demonic and as scary, but I'm probably pronouncing this wrong. Knecht Ruprecht.
Yeah.
Farmer Rupert, or Servant Rupert, depending on the translation. Mm-hmm. He's an old man that goes around, and he's kind of like, okay, well, if his was concentrated on more of a religious theme of, he would ask the children if they knew their prayers, and if they did, he would give them candy and treats. And if they didn't, he would beat them with a sack full of ashes. So, not quite as scary as perhaps Krampus, but still, I think the lesson was you better learn your prayers or you may get beat with a sack of ashes.
Yeah, I think it ties into more of the religious aspect of Christianity and Christmas than the, gift-giving, almost what has now become commercialized.
Right.
I mean, obviously these are old traditional things, but nowadays it's Santa Claus and, as far as here in the West, and you really don't even hear about these other guys.
Mm-hmm.
So. And I think there was another one too, probably the most controversial of them, especially in today's climate. I believe his name was Zwarte Piet.
Yeah, Black Pete or Black Peter. Mm-hmm. And this one I'd actually heard of because of the controversial nature. I didn't know much about it, but he was a black Moor from Spain, from when the North Africans had invaded Spain. And he would originally similar to the Farmer Rupert as far as could be good or bad. Mm-hmm. Bad children got punishments, good children got gifts. Even so far as in one telling of the tale that bad children, he would take them in a sack back to Spain to live with the Moors. But in recent years, they said that they kind of looked disfavorably on the negative aspects, and he just became more of a court jester type, to entertain the children and make them laugh. Of course, that's falling out of favor because this character is always dressed in full blackface, red lipstick, curly wig, overly colorful clothing. Yeah. As far as in today's climate, I don't think it was meant to be a negative representation because the kids loved him. He was, popular, merry-making, fun guy. But in today's political climate, obviously, very politically incorrect.
Yeah. And definitely more of a European thing than an American thing.
Oh, not American at all.
I've never even heard of him before. This was new to me. So
the only reason I'd ever heard of him is recently, I know you remember the Megyn Kelly blackface comment, and I was reading an article about that, and they were citing other examples that weren't not necessarily negative, and he came up in it, and that's the only way I ever heard about it.
Yeah. Yeah, because I also know that, actually, this is going to be a little off topic, and kind of spontaneous too, but I know, there's certain groups in the UK that do kind of like the blackface thing as well. It's not necessarily even meant as a representation of that. It's just, it was apparently part of a revolt thing that the people of the town did at one point. And they did that to disguise themselves. And then they do this drum dance thing. I've seen cool video clips of that. And now there's even calls for that to be removed, which I mean, I understand the sensitivity of portraying, certain people in a negative light, but when that's not even what it is,
No,
I see it as
I think the American version was meant to portray them in a negative light, but, like this European character is meant to delight children, and I don't know the exact origins of why he was a Moor from Spain, but I don't think it was meant to portray anyone in a negative light. But, but with our world kind of coming more together, the American version that has its history rooted in racism is going to kind of get muddied with the European stuff. And, there's going to be a lot of people that are just not comfortable with it altogether.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of funny that you bring, because obviously these were more European traditions of Christmas, with obviously the Roman Catholic Church integrating the pagan rituals that were common in place at the time into Christianity. And, St. Nicholas was obviously a real person. He was a saint. He was originally a bishop, like you said, in the Catholic Church in Turkey. Constantinople, I suppose.
At the time, yeah.
Yeah. But the interjection of a lot of these pagan traditions into Catholicism, when Christianity first hit the boat over, came over to America, Christianity in America and Christmas in America was definitely a totally different thing from what I understand.
Yes. Most of as everybody knows, most of the Protestants coming to America were fleeing religious persecution, but they were very, very strict Protestants. And they shunned a lot of Catholic, almost anything Catholic as far as ceremony goes. And they saw Christmas as a time of debauchery. And it was too much drinking, too much sex. So they shunned Christmas. And for many years, even England itself had school on Christmas Day up through the 1800s. So of course, they were Protestant as well. It wasn't until the late 1800s where it really started catching on with the Protestants. It was considered, sinful. Not necessarily the day itself or the religious implications of the day. The method of celebration was considered sinful.
Yeah, it sounds like it was more of a party than it is now. That's for
sure.
Yeah. So yeah, you said it was. If I'm not mistaken, it wasn't until about the 1870s that.
Yeah, I believe when I looked, it was 1870 that it was named an official U.S. holiday. So
that's actually fairly recent as far as it being as big of a deal as it is.
Yeah, post Civil War. I know. I also read that it was banned in Boston. Because of the puritanical nature of the religion in the Northeast at the time. Yeah. And that it was just banned until around 1870s or so as well.
Yeah, and I believe also in the very beginning, it wasn't so much the St. Nicholas version, the gift giving and all that. It was just kind of a somber, let's go to church, and kind of boring.
Yeah, and really, as far as the religious significance has really been ramped up in recent years. I know, now, the name of the holiday escapes me. The one where they talk about the wise men coming in January. There was a Catholic church celebrated that.
Yeah.
I cannot remember the name of it. And of
course, oh, yes.
I'm not a Catholic, so
I'm not Catholic either, but that's not atonement, it's something else.
Before Christmas, there's Advent.
Yeah.
Which is also a very somber, and, Christmas, sure, you partied it up, but leading up to Christmas was Advent, which was a somber, reflectful time. And, but Christmas was not the main holiday. And I know for a lot of Protestants in early, America, and I guess in Europe as well, when they were very puritanical, Easter was considered way bigger than Christmas because that represented the resurrection of Jesus. That was considered much more meaningful than simply the birth of Jesus.
2 hours later.
Epiphany,
that's what it is. Yeah, so it's kind of funny that you mentioned that because I know that in some of the Orthodox churches, I want to say the Russian Orthodox, possibly the Greek Orthodox churches as well, Christmas actually usually isn't celebrated on the 25th. They usually do it later, like in January, around the 7th. Usually, I think it's between the 7th and the 12th or something like that, if memory serves me correct. That's actually when they do their Christmas celebrations.
Yeah. So. And from what I understand, a lot of that has to do with the Gregorian calendar versus the Julian calendar and just minor differences there. I don't know the complete differences between the two calendars, but obviously we're on the Julian Roman-based and they are on the Gregorian-based calendar for their holidays still.
Yeah, and it's kind of funny you also tied in the wise men. Most people think when they hear the kind of shifting gears from kind of Santa Claus more into the religious aspect of it. Yeah, so most people have kind of the notion when it comes to the three kings or the three magi that, you know, they're traveling through the desert and that you really always see the nativity scene where they're there and people always kind of assume that's the birth of baby Jesus right then and there, right? The three kings are already standing there. That's actually not really the case. The Epiphany, like we mentioned earlier, that's actually this, because they're traveling through the desert. They see the star, the bright star over Bethlehem, where, you know, the Messiah has been born. And they then see the notion, and they're like, "Oh, this is where we're going," because they were kind of wandering through the desert, waiting for a sign from God, from what I understand. Again, I'm not a biblical scholar.
No, am I.
I mean, I guess technically I'm a reverend, but that's more or less just on paper to marry friends of mine that, you know, are too cheap to find somebody. But like I said, so that's where, obviously, and it wasn't until they had that epiphany that this is where they're going, that they then arrived with their gifts and what have you. And that's actually the scene that most people put together where they do the little nativity scenes. Is actually more of the, you know, post-epiphany moment.
Right.
When they've arrived on the scene.
Which was, as I mentioned earlier, considered a bigger holiday than Christmas in early Catholicism. The Epiphany was considered above Christmas. Christmas was actually somewhat of a minor holiday for a lot of its history. And it was no doubt, and this has been written in books, it's a little bit of speculation, but no doubt it was raised in importance because of pagans and folding pagans into the fold. You wanted to kind of support some of their traditions, like the Christmas tree, and it's also very convenient that it's also near the winter solstice, which was a big celebration because in the minds of the pagan people, that meant winter has stopped encroaching. That means every day past that is moving towards spring. So that's why it was such a big celebration. So obviously to, you know, encourage more pagans into the faith, they kept some of these traditions around, and the Catholics allowed them to keep these traditions around, which is now spread to the Protestants and everyone else as well, like the Christmas tree.
Yeah. And it's kind of funny too, because even in places where they don't really celebrate Christmas as much, I know in you know, East Asia, you know, Christmas will be maybe the exception of in Korea, because there's a fairly high Christian population there, you know, some smaller ones throughout. But even people who are non-religious, atheists, Buddhists, whatever, they'll even celebrate at least the commercialized Santa Claus at Christmas. And that's starting to become a thing as well.
Yeah.
How is it in the Middle East with Christmas?
Completely forbidden.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Because I know there's some places and they'll still do like the Christmas tree and what have
Well, you know, you have to have Syria, Lebanon, Lebanon. Lebanon is the town that you live in. But Lebanon, Syria, there is a high enough percentage of Christians that, you know, kind of in the Levant area, they will have celebrations. Every time, though, when you say the Middle East, I grew up on the peninsula, so anywhere in that peninsula, it's strictly forbidden.
So I actually want to differ on that, because I think I've seen notions of like some places. I want to say it was like the UAE or something like that, where they had like the light Christmas tree kind of thing.
Maybe recently, but when I was there, that was not the case.
Oh, okay.
Of course, it's been 20 years since I've been there. So, but yeah, recently, well, and there has been some modernization in some of those countries. UAE, even Saudi Arabia has liberalized a little bit. Like they're allowing women to drive now and hold office, you know. So things could have changed since then. But when I was a child, no, it was forbidden to celebrate Christmas, and we had to actually kind of keep it. I mean, we lived in a walled-in compound, so you know, it's not that big of a deal to keep it secret. But you didn't really go, you know,
Merry Christmas,
yeah,
or
when you went to school, you didn't really mention it or anything, you know.
That's kind of funny too, because technically Islam's part of the, I guess, Judeo-Christian family tree, the three religions of.
And Islam does believe that Jesus is a prophet from God. They just don't believe he's the son of God. They think that he's merely a prophet, and they don't believe he's the Messiah. So just Jesus himself is not offensive to them. It's the concept that he's the Messiah and the Son of God is what the part they don't like.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, I think we're going to take a break there, and we'll be back with you guys shortly after the commercial break. And if there's any content you'd like to see in the future, please reach out to us. We'd love to know what your thoughts are on the program, what you'd like to see, what you don't like, and try to create a show that not only we enjoy, but you guys enjoy as well.
And the more money you give us, the more we will like you.
Alrighty, so we're back from the break. So I guess let's talk a little bit about some family Christmas traditions and what have you.
Sure.
So I'll go ahead and let you start, Jason. What's some kind of family Christmas traditions that you guys did?
The one I always remembered as a kid, obviously excited to open presents, is we did and I think it's fairly common, is we opened one present on Christmas Eve, and that was kind of the night we stayed up a little late. My mom cooked party foods like appetizers, antipasto platters, crudités, things like that. And we just play games, and that's when the adults would have a little wine. And that was really the nighttime celebration that we had was on Christmas Eve. And then, of course, got up Christmas morning and had that. And our Christmas dinners tended to be a little earlier in the day, whereas Christmas Eve was more the late night, staying up, having a good time celebration. So obviously as a kid, I was mainly focused on opening that one gift. And when they'd let you pick, I always tried to pick the biggest thing. They didn't let me open the biggest thing, but that was the excitement for a kid, is you got to open that one gift.
Yeah, so I kind of didn't do that.
Yeah.
Obviously, for obvious reasons. My birthday's actually on Christmas Eve, so we didn't do the whole everybody gets to open presents on my birthday, because that would be kind of miserable. Because I've got some decent sized family, two older brothers and two younger brothers, so that would have been pretty miserable if they got to open presents on my birthday. So yeah. So you didn't do that, but so I did. But one of the things that we always had to do, I remember this when I was really little. On Christmas morning, before we could open our presents, we had to eat oatmeal. Mm-hmm. And I don't know why, it was just a thing. And as a kid, I hated it. Mm-hmm. And it's mainly because my parents couldn't cook oatmeal worth of crap. However, I've actually, since becoming an adult, I've grown a little bit more fond of oatmeal. I'm actually the one that cooks it now, because everybody else makes it like crap, like I said. So, because with them, it was just oats, milk, a little bit of sugar. Yeah. Here you go. Here's your gruel.
Yeah.
I definitely don't do that. There's 5 spice, cinnamon, brown sugar. Mm-hmm. I actually add rum to it, spiced rum to it as well, while making it. Which cooks off most of the alcohol, but leaves some of the flavor behind. And then, top it with, apple and pomegranate seeds, which totally makes it something that's worth having.
And Christmas themed spices, it's that kind of time of year.
Yeah, exactly. As opposed to milk, sugar, oats, and here's your gruel.
Yeah, yeah.
But like I said, that's a family tradition that I've kept alive, even in travels. When I was living in China and Taiwan, if I was there during Christmas time, which I was in China, and I actually think I've been at both places during Christmas at one point, I would definitely still keep the tradition alive. Mm-hmm. I'd just call my family and say, hey, I'm eating my oatmeal, and take a picture of it and send it over, something like that. Which is always kind of like the only real family tradition I think I have around Christmas time. Although sometimes when we were really little, my grandfather used to have it was an old school train set they'd set up around the Christmas tree on Christmas Day.
Oh, nice.
Run it around. I think it might have been one of the old Lionel sets or whatever. Mm-hmm. I know it was all electric powered and had like a little switch on it. Mm-hmm. All metal construction, metal cars and all that. And the engine even had like these little pellets you could put in it. Would make the smoke come out. It's kind of cool. But that's kind of fallen out of favor. And just mostly time and energy. So that's not something we've really done much anymore, which is kind of sad. Maybe at some point we'll try to bring that back, with my kids. But that's kind of where that is.
Yeah, and I know, some of those traditions do fall off when there's not a lot of young people in the family. For example, my family, everything's become a lot simpler because even my nephew's 18. So at that point, it's we're more less into the gift giving, more into the just hanging out and having a good time, being around family.
Yeah.
A lot of those old things that we did kind of went by the wayside, but now we just, I always bring a bottle of Crown Royal to my mother because she likes that whiskey, and she rarely drinks, but she likes to drink on Christmas, and we play board games and just have a great time with everybody.
Yeah, and that's really the best thing about Christmas, I suppose, because I'm kind of a Scrooge, especially with my birthday before Christmas, or the day before, and so I've always kind of been a little jaded about it.
Yeah.
But I suppose that's really the sentiment behind the holiday is, obviously, you have your religious aspect if you're a religious person, But I think at the end of the day, really spending time with family and trying to just enjoy that time, because especially when you become an adult, you get busy with life. You don't get to spend as much time with family as you necessarily might like to. Then time's not slowing down. It feels like it's getting faster. So taking a moment and doing that, it's always nice.
And it becomes tougher in today's culture too, because I don't know many people whose parents are still married. So you're trying to split your time between two houses, and I've been going to my mother's on Christmas for years, and then my father invited me this year, and I was kind of, it was like a week ahead of time, and I was like, well, I've already committed to going to my mother's house, so that makes it tougher too, and that kind of makes the traditions, break down a little bit as well. You're spreading that out over two households rather than one.
Yeah, I definitely know what that's like. My family's, my parents are divorced as well, and then so are hers actually. So, and then with the kids, so it's like, oh, we get to really, it's like 4.
Yeah,
there's a lot of running around on Christmas.
Yeah,
it actually kind of makes it a little less enjoyable.
Yeah, it's definitely not like it was when I was a kid, and it was. Of course, we lived overseas, so generally it was, if we weren't overseas during Christmas, which a lot of the times we were. But if we weren't, it was, everybody gathered at Grandma's house. Especially Thanksgiving, it was, my mom and dad, maybe his brothers and their kids, and, or if we were going over to my mom's family, I mean, her sister and her brothers and their kids. It was just, you packed more people into one house. But now, like you said, you're running around to 4 or 5, trying to celebrate that many times. So it makes it a little tougher.
Yeah, it definitely does. And like I said, I'm also when it comes to like the Christmas foods for the most part, and same thing with Thanksgiving, I'm really not a big fan. I'm a big fan of turkey and ham for that, kind of the casseroles and stuff that's normally served around that time of year. Generally not the biggest fan of that. So that also is like kind of a bummer. It's like, just, I don't know, bring on the pies and we're good.
That's actually an interesting new tradition. Speaking of family traditions, that I started with my mother this year. Or last year we started it. I cooked last year. Is she said the same thing. She's like, I want to still keep traditional for Thanksgiving, but she said for Christmas, we just had Thanksgiving, and like you said, I don't think anybody's really that big of a fan of the food. Some people will say they are, but why don't they cook it through the rest of the year? That's kind of what I've always said. It's like, if they were really that big of a fan of corn casserole, you'd see it show up on the dinner table a lot more than what it does. So we started cooking, like, for example, last year I did carnitas. And so we ate Mexican food. And this year I believe my mother said she's going to cook quiche. So traditionally, I actually like, we're going off the beaten path and, cooking different foods from different regions of the world for Christmas instead of just sticking traditional.
It's kind of funny you mentioned that, because I remember we were in, Angela and I were in China back in 2008, and we were there during Thanksgiving and Christmas. I remember for Thanksgiving what we decided to do. It was kind of funny because obviously getting a turkey over there is not going to happen.
Yeah.
So it was kind of funny. We hodgepodge together like the best elements that we could with what was there for Thanksgiving. So we got a fried chicken, which was actually, in my opinion, better. We had, potatoes and carrots and all that kind of stuff, but just, we had some pretty good sized potatoes. I think we just did baked potatoes. We didn't mash them. We had those, carrots, pomegranate in lieu of like the cranberries. And small bottle of wine. It was actually really nice. Actually, I enjoyed it better. Fried chicken's better than turkey in my opinion. Any day of the week.
I don't think most people would argue with you. Once again, why don't you see turkey on restaurant menus? Yeah. I know you'll have those diehards out there listening to this saying, "Oh no, man, I love that stuff," and it's like, well, I don't think people like it as much as they say they do. I was always kind of a Scrooge around Christmas time. Birthday and everything. I remember one year, because, the thing is, try to have friends over on Christmas Eve. It's not going to happen. Yeah, they
try to have
stuff,
that nice birthday celebration with your friends and all that as a kid growing up, and it's like, you call them, it's like, hey, you want to come over for my birthday? And it's like, oh, sorry, I can't, we're doing Christmas. And it's always kind of a bummer. I remember one year, because I have 2 other brothers, and both of them had, two of my brothers have birthdays in December as well. So, I remember we did like kind of a joint birthday party thing. So it was between his, which is in the middle of December, and mine, which is obviously when it is. And we kind of pushed it closer to his birthday. It was like a couple days after what happened. And that was like the only time growing up as a kid that I actually got to have friends over during it. And I think it snowed that day too, so it was pretty terrible as well, because some of the people that said, yeah, I was going to come. It's like, oh, well, it snowed, so I can't.
Mm-hmm.
Especially down here in Tennessee. So I think, I was living here at the time. People can't drive in the snow here.
No.
Even if it's, a dusting.
I got to be honest, there's times I can't get out of my driveway because if you don't shovel that snow off, it just gets compacted into ice, and which I don't mind. I just use it as an excuse, like everybody else around here does. I think it's an excuse. It's not just a snow day for kids; it's a snow day for everybody in Tennessee.
Mm-hmm. So, but that's kind of Christmas in a nutshell, I think.
Yeah, speaking of getting jaded with Christmas, which is why I've really concentrated more on like I said, like getting together, playing board games. Because working in the restaurant business so long like I did, and I haven't worked in it for 5 years, but I worked in the restaurant business for 15 years, you get jaded for the holidays because it just kind of becomes a time where you work harder for other people. Mm-hmm. And then on top of it, you're trying to manage your social obligations with work, and it just makes for just a miserable season. Because you're busier at work and you're busier with your social obligations, and you're just exhausted.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of people, especially there's so many people in this country now that hold restaurant and retail jobs. It can be a downer on them. So I always try to think about them, during the holidays. And I honestly, I really try to make an effort. Like I don't go out on Black Friday. I don't, my dad will say, hey, let's go get something to eat on Christmas Eve. And I'm just like, I just don't want to participate in that part of it because I've been the victim, as it were, of that part of it. But I tell you, now that I'm out of it, it's much more enjoyable. Because when you're in that world, it's not the greatest fun.
No, it's definitely not. I've also worked in the restaurant industry before in the past. And it was one of the big, casual dining chain restaurants. It was never fun to work on Christmas.
Mm-hmm. Just a bunch of waiters getting together, drinking afterwards, and being miserable.
Yeah.
Of course, I do have to say, when I was in the restaurant business, we were always closed on Christmas Day. I don't think I ever worked a Christmas Day. I worked plenty of Thanksgivings and Christmas Eves and New Year's. But I think now you're seeing a trend of more and more starting to open on Christmas Day.
Oh, yeah.
It's not a lot by any means, but it's just like the stores are starting to open on Thanksgiving instead of Black Friday. Which I always, that's one thing I liked about Christmas Day when I was in the actual, just that one day, is it was really nice just driving down the road and all the parking lots were empty. Like the whole world took a rest. And that's the nice part about it. And I think we're getting away from that. I would like to see a return to that.
Yeah, it's kind of funny you mention that. Like, I'm going to go back to the whole relating it back to Chinese New Year because, obviously in a lot of these places people travel right before, right? But during actual Chinese New Year, it's pretty, if you're a foreigner living there, it's actually really miserable. Because you'd think it'd be like all these celebrations and stuff. And no, everyone's doing the stay at home with their families and doing that. So nothing is open. So if you did not stock up on groceries beforehand, take Taiwan, for example. If you're in Taiwan during Chinese New Year, you have 2 food options open and available to you at any given point during Chinese New Year. And that's going to be 7-Eleven or McDonald's. Those will be the only things open.
Yeah.
And other than that, you're hanging out with other expats.
Yeah.
Drinking at home, playing video games. And that's about it.
Yeah, it used to be like that here. Even 10 or 15 years ago, I remember if you needed gas, you got gas because the only gas stations were likely to be open were like truck stops and things like that, on the interstate. But like in, when I was in high school and living in Portland, I'm pretty sure their gas stations were closed on Christmas Day. You had to go out to the interstate if you wanted to get something. But like I said, it's kind of inconvenient for, people who are traveling or whatnot, but it is just nice for the whole world to be able to take a rest. Everybody from the lowliest worker to the richest guy, everybody gets that day.
Yeah. And that's something that'd be kind of nice to see more of.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Alrighty, so we're going to take another quick commercial break. We'll be back to you guys shortly. Alrighty, so we're back from the break. So, we're actually going to be off for a couple of weeks. So, apologize about the inconvenience, but I'm actually going to be taking a trip. So, not going to be available for the next 2 weeks as far as podcasts go, which is kind of a bummer, but it kind of is what it is. So, I guess we'll be seeing you guys back again on the...
we're shooting on January the 20th. We'll be the first one. And then probably a week after that releasing.
Yeah, so I'm going to be gone. We might try to, we'll see if we can do it. No promises on this one, but maybe we can do like a little Skype episode or something like that.
Yeah, possibly if we can get that figured out.
But no promises on that. But if anything else, I believe you said your buddy Will's going to be coming back.
Yes,
or should be booked for that one. Right?
Yes, I made him put it on his calendar.
Okay. So hopefully we'll have that fun conspiracy episode.
Yeah, definitely.
But if not, we'll also possibly do a travel episode as well. So, because I'll actually be going to be going back to Taiwan for a little bit. And I've also got a friend of mine who has a wedding in Indonesia, so I'm going to be going to check that out. So that'll be fun.
I really want to see some of those pictures from the Indonesian wedding. I got to see that.
Planning on taking a lot of pictures and video and all that good stuff. Should be a lot of fun. So quite excited. So that's going to be kind of where that's at. So yeah, it'd be kind of cool if we did if we can manage it. I don't know. It's going to be fun with the time difference and everything else. But we might be able to.
We'll give it a shot.
See what
no guarantees.
No guarantees, yeah. But if nothing else, we'll try to put something together. That'd be cool.
And happy birthday to Paul, since, he's been living his life overshadowed by Jesus.
Yeah.
So happy birthday to you.
Thank you, sir.
And then our next episode be my birthday.
Yeah.
So it'll be 3 days away from my birthday. So. Yeah. All right, guys.
Well, you guys have yourselves a Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
And Happy Holidays and Hanukkah belated.
And Happy New Year, since we won't see you until after.
Yeah. So, again, thank you guys for watching. Please hit that like and subscribe button. And be sure to check us out on the Facebook page as well. Okay. You guys have yourselves a Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.